Hello? Hello? Welcome, everybody. I see some names there. And you all may be muted because Elka and I figured out how to mute everyone on our end. So if you want to speak, you can unmute yourself. Janice, you made it. Great. Janice is actually going to be talking a little bit later, so that's fantastic. We got the recording going. Janice, who's on the screen right now, some of you may remember from back when on the Consciousness Playground we did an experiment with Janice, her husband Rod, and healer Ken Graydon, pain experiment, and a few other ones, $3,000 experiment. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. So Janice can bring some of that forward today. I'll just give one more minute for people to check in.
Morning, Wendy.
Oh, hi there. How are you?
Good. How about you?
Good. Glad to be here. You're indoors today. Usually you're in a hammock.
Yeah, it's getting a little cold outside.
Yeah, same here. No, that's all right. Okay, I don't see you on here, but I think you are on. And just let's people slowly join in. So I'm just going to start. Welcome, whether you're here live or listening to this later. Today we are, working a little bit more with the last shift that I released, which was shift number 9, practice time. And if you listen to that recording recently, on it I worked with helping you identify a default emotional pattern, something that's been typical for you that you just wanted to identify, sense, lift away, and hopefully the recording helped you with that. Does anybody want to share a comment or anything about working with that recording? You do have a minute for that if you want to. Anything that you were able to notice or work with?
Well, one thing I've noticed is my default emotional...
Oh, can you speak up just a little bit, Wendy?
I'm sorry. One thing I've noticed is my default emotional state has changed a lot over the last couple of years. So, yeah, it was interesting to notice that, and I felt like there were some more changes that happened, but I'm not sure what they were.
Yeah.
It's getting more and more subtle, so it's harder to pick out.
Yes, that is so true. Yeah.
Things are getting really subtle, so sometimes it's really hard to pick out exactly what happened. You just know something happened.
Mm-hmm. It's nice, though, to be at that stage where they are more subtle, right? Because it means that the background stillness and peace and calmness is so much more pervasive. Is that?
Yeah, and I noticed that with especially one family member, well, a couple family members that are just in constant turmoil, and I'm just sitting there in my little quiet space while they're going into tizzies, and it seems to help them, like just holding that space for them, but their tizzy doesn't get into me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm really happy for you, and I've certainly had that experience myself and know how profoundly transformative it is to be in the world with so much more quiet and stability on the inside. Yeah, I'm glad for that. Good. Well, that actually was a great lead into what we're going to talk about today. So today Okay, so always what I'm interested in doing is helping find ways to explain and make more tangible the intangible in a way that we can then actively work with it. And, you know, it's like we live in this physical world that there are real things happening to us, around us, inside us. And most of us have kind of forgotten how is it that we participate in those experiences, because so much of the time it feels like we're at the mercy of them. Uh, and so today I really want to give you, it's 3 tools or 3 options for finding a way to more capably and with more discernment and more nuance, kind of find where it is in you that you can work on to shift the states that you're in, and also therefore the experiences that are reflected back. I often liken it to, like, when I'm working on my website, if I want a certain color blue, I'm not working in the background with a color, I'm actually working with a code. And so the language that I need to work in order to get something to appear on the screen is a completely different language than the way it appears when I see it or you see it on my screen. And it's the same thing in terms of working with the code that we have access to in terms of the reality that shows up around us. It's the code, the language of the universe is vibrational, it's energy, it's fluctuating waveforms, and we have been taught so little about how to find and work with those waveform structures inside us in a way that's understandable. So today, like I said, I want to work with 3 sort of optional ways to work with that. Oh, there was something else I wanted to say there. Lost it. So let me tell you, I'm actually just going to describe just give me a second here. Just want to feel for something. It's some of it has to do with making the link between language and vibration, language and emotion, language and energy. And so the first one I want to describe is just a way of kind of playing or using the in deeper process or awareness of our emotional realm, like I said, to work with the nuances. So as an example, like what, I'll just describe it first and then we'll go through and let you apply it yourself. So for example, if I have a project I want to work on, like say my dissertation that I had to write, this big project, but it doesn't matter. It could be any particular issue that is present in your life. So what I'll start by doing is just taking a piece of paper like this and writing down words that capture my experience in the moment when I think of that situation. So initially, when I thought about that big project, the words that I might have written down would be things like overwhelm, unknown, lots of work, heady, right? All the things that just reflected my state of mind or my expectation of what that experience might be like for me. And the thing about when you start putting language to your feelings or expectations is that they kind of are magnetic, right? So as you start to say one, it will bring in others that are of similar quality. And the thing about our emotional realm that is always sort of frustrating to me is that we have so few words that we use to describe what goes on in that realm, right? How many words do we, how many emotions do we typically describe, you know, on a regular basis? About a range of 20, 25. And yet, actually, just before this call, I looked up how many colors does Benjamin Moore make? How many paint chips do they make? It's over 35, right? Like there are so many nuances in the range of color that our sight can pick up and that we can discern. And the same with sound, right? That there's so many, like not just the notes of the musical system, but just different tones and volumes and all of that. There's just so much richness there. And that same richness is right inside us in what we pick up in the realm of energy or emotion, but we have developed so little language to describe what goes on in there. You know, it's either like, I'm sad, or I'm angry, or I'm overwhelmed, or I'm frustrated. And yet there's, you know, there's subtlety there that's really useful to go in and just notice the qualities of. And every time that we do that, it increases our ability to sense in that area, just in the same way that if you started looking at paint chips and you sort of see, oh, this one has a little more yellow base or that one has a more of a green, you just develop more discernment. But the advantage, of course, in working in the emotional realm is as you work with those structures that are uncomfortable emotions or negative emotions, they change and flux and flow just as you bring attention there. And so, yeah, just sitting down and identifying in language some of the nuances that come to you in words in terms of the current emotional experience that you're having on some particular topic, really sort of highlights in words with more detail what's going on inside there. And sometimes when you have a word to capture something, it then raises it in your awareness as well. So there's this really nice interchange between, you know, left brain, the language that you would write down, and also the inner world of experience or emotion. They go back and forth, they feed each other. And we know that you know, emotions in our body actually are structures. You know, our bodies, as we've all heard so many times, are 75 or more % water. And so when you're feeling a certain feeling, there is structure there. There is something tangible to feel. And so highlighting and paying attention to the nuances or subtleties of an emotional charge or an emotional experience is to develop more comfort in that area, and also take from, you know, the intangible more to the tangible, which is to bridge those realms between intangible or invisible and tangible. There's just a lot of shifting going on, so I'm paying attention to that as I work as well. So when I've done this, I work in words, but here's the second thing I just want to throw in as an idea of how to use this if you want to in your own work with yourself, is that, let's say, for example, that something that I feel when I'm in a situation is fear. Well, that actually will be creating some sort of vibrational pattern, right? The sand and the sound thing, there's a pattern that's created there. And if you're the type of person that is more visual than I am, you could actually, you know, start drawing kind of an image on your paper of what the structure is that you are feeling as you put into words, you know, the emotions that you're feeling. So fear, you might draw as kind of a dark circle. Now, if you're also feeling, let's say, worry, you might draw that in a different way. And there's something really useful about, you know, sensing inside and then bringing into either words or visual form something that, like an emotion that's intangible. So to do this particular exercise of identifying, you know, just your emotional state now, or the sand that you are creating in the situation now, is to highlight that and bring it to conscious awareness in a way that then you can use the in deeper process to simply sense and feel as you work with that energy within yourself and as it works with you. The other thing that's really interesting about doing this is that because you've worked with other things in the past and you've felt, you know, as Wendy was saying earlier, old patterns dissolve that just don't show up anymore. None of us are starting from scratch. And so it can be really interesting too, just to think while you're doing this, of what used to be here that is no longer here. And even to put that into words. Oh, I used to always be worried about what people thought. Or I used to be always anxious in the background all the time, and none of that is here anymore. So again, just to be able to identify how you've already shifted some of the sand of your experience is really useful in terms of helping you understand how much more control you have over this stuff than we knew we did before. Because part of the thing, as I've said before, that keeps these emotional structures or energy patterns in place is when we identify with them. This is just the way I am. Or if we say, I am afraid, then our identity sits within this structure and it seems bigger than we are. Whereas if we just say, oh, I sense a vibration that I would name fear, and then we can identify in our body where that sense, that structure itself is, and it only occupies a certain location, which we are bigger than. And this experience of identifying ourselves as beyond any of our emotional structures really goes a long way towards creating a background state that allows all of them to then become much more fluid and flexible and easily changed, right? You probably noticed that for yourself, that initially when you started doing this, they were hard to change or really dense or, you know, took a long time, and now maybe they're getting a little bit more quick to change, or they're not as embedded as they were before. Okay, so that's just the work with start with your initial starting place. The next thing that you can do from there is kind of set that aside and then sit down and just quietly think about what states or feelings or what words would capture the way that I would like to feel or be in this situation instead. And I'll just give you an example. This is actually the one that I did for my dissertation. So I just started writing down just words that when I said them, just created a really good feeling in me. So I have simple. Just the idea of it being very simple felt good. Paradigm shifting. Coherent. So I just have a whole list here of words that rather than describing any of the content or the facts, just put into place the feeling state that I wanted to experience as I went through this journey. And that too is to create and identify more of the subtlety of the emotional experience that we can have. And I just grabbed this book that has these pictures. I'm not very like visual or geometric, but it's almost like as you use words. So say I use the word simple in my body, that would create a certain vibration that maybe creates a structure like this blue ring here or something. And then as I add the word coherent, maybe it adds one of the other elements that you can see. Now, none of this is visible to us, but we can actually feel it. And one day we're going to have the tools that will allow us to actually measure these things and marvel at these structures that are actually real. Maybe the word paradigm shifting creates the color, right? And so it's just the willingness to spend some time within yourself to slowly and carefully and playfully identify, maybe the structure will come first, maybe the words come first, but just to allow your right brain, right, to create the energetic pattern that reflects to you the experience that you want to have on that particular subject. And mine certainly develop over time. We're going to get on to what Janice is going to talk about with us in a minute. But I will set mine aside. I have a particular place that I like to put them. And then over time, I just come back and revisit them. And I'm always amazed at how oftentimes things come about just doing it this way. And then I can add extra statements or whatever that just seem important at the time. Sometimes I'll put pictures or other things with that as well. So the point is that it's a very different way of planning or working with your life that's in the realm of the coding of us, that is working very thoughtfully and consciously with the fabric and the waveforms that underlie everything. And so I'm sure there's all kinds of other ways to do that, but this is the way that I've liked to use in the past and continue to use. And again, just because like even as I sit and work with you now, and as you sit here with me, there's probably like a dominant feeling that you have. And I do too. But it's just like a generalized feeling. And yet there's so much fluctuating in there and so much nuance that can be enjoyed and teased out. Right? So for example, if I use the word connection, right? Here we are, we're explorers in a way of being in the world that is a bit uncommon. Our names appear on the screen, our faces are here, some are listening later, but there's a level of connection that exists between us. That if I say that, right, it becomes highlighted a little bit in some way for you. It might just be a nice idea, that's fine. But there's something that vibrates then amongst all of us that if you take awareness inside yourself, you might be able to sort of discern in some way that's interesting, subtle maybe, but new for you. And it's like a string on a guitar that you can pluck at will. And when you do that, that then, over time, if you pluck it over and over again, it creates more and more structure in you emotionally, also in your body, because those things are not separate, also in the world and what you see get reflected back to you. If I pull out another word of the feeling that I have as we're here together, well, maybe somebody else has a word. Anybody just have a word that summarizes or just captures something that you're noticing now? You can put it in the chat or you can say it. Something that you like about being here. Belonging. Ah, that's Christy in the chat. Yeah, belonging. Yeah, and notice how, if you can, just inside you, the word belonging has a slightly different nuance to it. Also beautiful, but something in tone has changed from the word that we were highlighting a minute ago, which was connection. They're so related, but they're slightly different, right? It's like a different, slightly different paint chip, slightly different, E flat, E somewhat flat, quiet, right? And because we're not used to hanging out here, we just don't know. It's just not a realm that we're used to discerning in. But this is where we create from. And so the exercise of sitting down with a piece of paper and putting into words some of these things and really feeling them, the words that matter most to you or that come and resonate for you on some subject that's important to you, and consciously and deliberately choosing those words, re-choosing them, maybe drawing them if that appeals to you. But just really letting yourself spend more time in there and feeling for the nuances develops that muscle, develops that skill, develops those patterns into more sand, right? Because if the word connection is one sound that vibrates as sand, and the word belonging is another word that vibrates slightly differently, that's a beautiful pattern to have in just those two words. A beautiful pattern that if you really love the idea of having more and more of that in your life, you can just focus on the feeling of that, and it creates more and more substance there. Even just as an exercise, if you chose those two words or any two words and just felt for those, started your day off, say, by feeling for those, your life would start to reflect back more and more and more of that, and more action for you to take from that place. It really just is the code behind the fabric of our lives. And the other really cool thing, I know we've talked about this before, is when you notice a feeling of those really positive emotions like connection, belonging, appreciation, whatever they are, just notice how radiant they are. They're in you, you sense them, but they're boundaryless. Actually, I'd be interested to know if anybody has a sense of boundary on that. But that is like all those positive emotions are the structure that holds everything in place. And they're what we come back to when we dissipate the structure of the negative emotions that separate us or seem to separate us from everything else. So earlier, like right at the beginning of the call, Wendy was talking about how just now she has so much, her feelings, or I'm assuming negative feelings, are so much more subtle and hard to sense because there's so much stability now that she's in touch with. as she moves through her day-to-day life, which is the background structure of everything. So, anybody before we move on want to say anything or ask any questions about that or comment? Does it seem interesting? Does it seem relevant?
I just want to say I like your color analogy.
How so?
Well, it's like, you start off and it's like you're looking at your primary colors. Okay, so these immediate fears and worries and whatever negative things, they're big chunky things in your body. You can feel them, you can see them, you can work with them, and then you kind of move on to the secondary, tertiary color, the bigger color wheel, and things get okay. So we've got some other things, but they're still pretty clear. And then you start getting into, like you said, what was it, 38,000 paint chips that, God knows how many Bear has at Home Depot. Just look at white, right? So how many shades of just white? Then it gets harder. That's what I was talking about, that subtlety. But I like your analogy of making an analogous to all these little shades of color. Kind of helps my brain wrap around it a little bit better.
Yeah, helps you understand your own experience a little bit more. And then when you have that thought, you can actually feel for the nuances.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if other people really felt that discernment of the difference between the idea of connection and the feeling of belonging. But to me,
Definitely.
that's a beautiful
Yeah.
distinction. Christy's saying this is a nice bridge to focus the left brain direction from reaction to creation. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, anybody else want to speak before I'm going to bring Janice in for a minute? Okay, we'll probably have a little bit of time at the end too. So just by way of introducing Janice, the thing that I myself do once I have written down the summary of the feeling states of the experiences that I want to have on a particular topic is that I will put them on this. I have these little, I don't know, I guess they're little chargers, dining plate chargers. I just set them on there. Here I got a little stack of them here, different subjects. And then I just put them away in my closet that's back there and leave them there to percolate. And I like doing that because it's just a way of, I'm going to let Janice explain in a little more detail, but just allowing that state then to have a place that it's held in my real life that then I can come back and revisit. But the idea to do that was introduced to me by Janice Dieter, and I'm just going to let Janice explain a little bit more about this idea of, she calls them cooking stations. So these are cooking stations of mine. And Elka, are you able to unmute Janice, or Janice, are you able to unmute yourself? Oh, there you're
Am
on.
I unmuted?
Yes, you're unmuted.
You can hear me. Yay. Well, cooking stations, they came out of Richard Bartlett's Matrix Energetics, because he liked to play with all sorts of toys and stuff. And his whole philosophy is you look for a solution set. So I'm brain, but I'm also very visual tactile. So I thought of putting down, okay, this is what I want. And it's a matter of getting very clear. What do you want? And keep it simple. I love your word thing, because your words are holding all of those spaces, all of those marker points, almost like on a grid. And that was what I started doing with cooking stations, is I would put a piece of paper down that had what I want. Simple statement. It could be for me this summer it was be pain free. That would be good. I injured my back in the process of making a 2,700 mile move. It hasn't been a fun summer. For other people, it could be get a new job and maybe some qualifications of what they wanted, characteristics, and then let go of needing to think about it and get playful. And that's where all of my other tools, I will use things as simple as, if you can see it, it's just a stone in the shape of a heart that I picked up one day along a creek. Something like a little key, something to unlock a door. It could be a reminder of something that's very, very playful. Dolphins. Or you can get elaborate and you can get yourself a Harry Potter wand. Something that's magical. I'm going to try to show you what I've got. I have a tray table over here that I have a bunch of things on. Just ideas of things that they may represent something that you can say, but when you put them down, they represent what is necessary to create this thing you say you wanted. So let me see if I can maneuver this so you can see my tray table. And these are all the different types of things, and they don't have to mean anything.
Just give us a minute to catch up to you,
But
Janet.
what they do is they hold a particular state. Okay. Where did you leave? Where did you leave off hearing me?
I think we can hear you. Your video is a little bit slower than your audio. So show us your tray table.
Okay. Trying to find out a way to get it. So you can see it's anything and everything. It can be anything from a stone to something that's elaborate and expensive. The idea is, and I don't even put them on a tray table as, oh, this means this, it should go here. Then it gets into a feeling. I will feel something either in my heart space or in my gut or in my hand. This wants to play. And I just put it wherever it feels right until it goes, okay, that's done. And like you, I instead of putting it away, I'll put it in a space where I can walk away. And the walking away for me is the letting go. You don't think about this anymore. You just let it do its thing. I think it has always felt to me more like you're creating the solution set you want. And when you walk away, you're done thinking about that thing. If you sit there and you keep thinking and ruminating on what it is you want, you're always telling the universe, I don't have this yet. You create this grid, this pattern, and whether it's with your words or whether it's with your toys or whether it's with colors. I mean, I can imagine somebody putting a number of colors together that would create a frequency pattern that could create this, or even music. I can think, now as you're talking, I can think of a number of different ways this can happen. But when you walk away and you let it go, you say, okay, I've got it. It's here. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like your attractant field. Mm. That's the way I would put it.
Yeah. There's everything to like about that, right? It's completely right brain intuitive, that you're just choosing these objects or things without rational thought. It's just following your instincts and laying them into a space that represents what you want or the thing you're working on, and then to walk away and leave it and understand that the quantum field has it for you. Yeah. Beautiful. And Christy's saying, wow.
That was when we did the $3,000. Yeah, when we did the $3,000 experiment, I mean, that was one of the things that we brought in, but we had people who were creating far more than $3,000 before the experiment started. And when I did mine, I actually ended up manifesting many times more than that when my mother's house sold for like $65,000. You know, we didn't think it would because it had been in bad condition.
Mhm.
So you draw in more than what you expect, which is even better. And I think that's the allowing the right brain to choose the play toys and the walking away and just letting it do its thing rather than you continuing to qualify what has to show up.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, Janice. Does anybody want to?
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad you could make it here today. I know usually it's early for you in the morning, these calls where you are, but does anybody want?
Well, we're actually not as early now.
Because of the time.
Arizona doesn't change time.
Okay. Oh, great.
Yeah, so we're now with Mountain Time.
Well,
Thank you for.
yeah, does anybody want to ask Janice a question or comment or anything? If this is something you're interested in learning more about or trying. I think you did a great job of explaining it, Janice, but somebody speaking?
Yes, it's Krista. Hi, I have a question. Each object that you are intuitively pulling towards, does that represent a particular feeling to you?
It can, but usually my sense is it's actually the solution that I want that is drawing the object and not me myself.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
But I guess, Chris, if it appealed to you, right, there's no right or wrong way to do it. If you did want to choose objects based on having them represent different feelings, you absolutely could do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this isn't an exam. There's no right or wrong.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good question. Thanks for asking it. Anyone else? Any questions? Comments for Janice about her cooking stations? Excellent. Okay. So always, I guess my next thought is I really would love to use the last few minutes of this call to give you a chance, if you want to start using one of these ideas or all of them for something right now that's important to you. So one way to do that would actually be, I guess, to decide maybe after this call, if there's something in particular, a way that you want to approach trying this. Do you want to just sit and make a list of either, your current feeling states like I described, or future feeling states, or actually to maybe plan or think about how you might set up your own cooking station? I use a little, like I said, just a little platter like this. Janice uses tray tables. Do you have a place in your house or office or wherever you are that would be just the place that you could put these things that would call you to it as well, right? Just like we've talked about all this being sort of right brain and intuitive, and Janice talked about the objects sort of revealing themselves and then highlighting themselves. Is there a particular place in your surroundings that are the place to put something? And if so, this might be enough now just to identify that for you. I'm just remembering, actually, this is kind of funny. A few years ago, some of you may know, I renovated a little house around the time that we were doing the $3,000 experiment in the consciousness playground. And at the time, the only place that was clean in the house was this little windowsill. And that was where I did my cooking station. And I only had 3 things on it. One was a tiny little plant, a Christmas cactus, a little bowl of jujubes, because I ate all kinds of jujubes when I was there. And one more thing I can't remember. But right behind me right now is that little Christmas cactus, and it's just starting to bloom. I don't know if you can see that. So usually I don't have it there, but today I do. So yeah, so maybe, just over the next couple of weeks, let this be a time to really let yourself delve more trustingly and more actively and more playfully into that right brain guidance that you have, that emotional guidance, and let yourself use that to either create a cooking station or work with words, whatever your language is. I also like that idea of music that you mentioned, Janice, because that's not something that I would have thought of, but really let yourself be drawn to the things that speak most to you, and even maybe get outside your natural comfort zone. Christy says, I like how it derails the ruminating. Yes, for sure. For sure. Is anybody having a challenge just with the idea of how to use this or where to start that you want a little bit of help with? That's good. Let's see. There is one thing I'm just going to mention. I think we're done with that for today, that piece of it. Ready to just let that percolate with each of you and do what you will with it. Certainly interested if you're interested in sharing anything about how you use this going forward or what you try. But I do want to mention before we go today is that if you hopefully have seen the emails I've sent out or the notes in the Facebook group about how in December I've decided not to do these Zoom calls, but instead to offer each of you the chance either to have a private session with me or to do 30 days of my audio email coaching program, which involves just as much back and forth as you want to have by email. And then I make an audio recording, usually, or it could be a Zoom recording this time, related to a subject that's of interest to you. So I just thought that would be a really interesting thing for me to connect with some of you on a more one-to-one personal level, just to help you really move forward in a way that we could, with more specific focus on where you're at and what would be helpful for you and what you want to work on. And then also that would give me a better sense of the group membership as a whole in going forward, and also give you a nice little bit of a break from the usual change of pace, because I think it's good to mix things up every once in a while. So that occurred to me to do. And they're actually, the links to initiate that are now on our private Immersion page on my website. But I'll send a link out about that, a reminder, when I send this recording out to you later today. So, Christy's saying, such a lovely gift. You're welcome. Yes, my pleasure. Good. Will that feel done? Anything missing for anyone? You happy to just sort of drift off and carry on and continue with all of us still vibrating and holding the field and staying in connection and in belonging together and continuing to grow.
Feels finished. It was good.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All
I've
right.
done some of those things. I just putting it into words, like what you're doing, super helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, oh, yeah, I've done that and it worked. Oh, there's a name for that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Excellent.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again, Janice, for sharing your expertise and for being here.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we'll see you all in 2 weeks then. Bye, friends.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.